All right, welcome to EECS Discussion 13. It's the last discussion of the semester. Today I'm gonna just talk about elements of professionalism since this is your your final week. You should be focused on polishing up your game, making it feel better, making it look better. Um, so I wanted to go through a couple things. Um, so first off, as a reminder, use TextMeshPro instead of normal text. TextMeshPro scales better. You don't get blurry text anymore. Some teams, you may have noticed in your playtesting feedback that we commented on the fact that your game had blurry text. That would be the case if you were using normal text rather than TextMeshPro. TextMeshPro is kind of designed for Unity to not make things blurry. You can see I have the example from the UI discussion loaded up, and here I'm using TextMeshPro both in my button and in my text here. And in the game, if I change the size, it it scales properly. So yeah, I will again recommend that you make sure you're using TextMeshPro rather than normal text, and it will improve the quality of the text in your games as well. I would also suggest picking a new nice font. Uh, there are plenty of open source, plenty of fonts that you can have a license for free that look much better and will probably fit the theming of your game. One place to look for fonts would be Google Fonts. So if you just look for Google Fonts, fonts.google.com, there's just a whole lot of things to choose from. So let's say I pick display. Just these are all the fancy looking fonts. And you know, here's this one right here. I like how this looks. So I'm going to click download family here, and it'll download it into my downloads folder. I'll show it. I can unzip this font here. You can see it's a .ttf file. So what I'm going to do is first off, I'm going to install it onto my system. So now it's installed onto my operating system. Then I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to go to my Unity folder uh, for this project. And then I'm going to go to Assets. I'll create a folder called Fonts. I'll paste this here. And then back in Unity, I'm going to go to Window, TextMeshPro, Font Asset Creator. And I'm just going to put this window here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in this font here. And I'm going to choose auto sizing. I'm just going to choose padding 5. I'm going to set the Atlas resolution to a little bit higher just because character set ASCII. That's if you're just using English letter characters and numbers, ASCII should be enough for you. It'll reduce the file size that you're using. So I'm going to hit Generate Font Atlas, and it will generate the font atlas here. And this is so now we can use the this font here in our fonts. It creates a font asset for us. So then I can go back now to my text in TextMeshPro, and here where it's using Liberation Sans, and drag that in. And hey, look, now we're using a font that we downloaded. And the license for fonts here are under the Open Font license. which means you can freely use them in projects, but you can't sell these fonts on their own. So if you're using the fonts in your game, this is perfectly fine under the OFL. And you just make sure to include this in your credits.txt as well. So that here is how you can, with TextMeshPro, create new font assets. I would recommend thinking about it and going for it. It will improve the look and feel of your game greatly rather than the kind of recognizable default Unity font. So that's what I wanted to mention there. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is scene transitions. I just wanted to go through a quick, easy implementation of fading in and out scene transition. Just implementing that. So let's go ahead and get into it. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create an empty object. I'm going to call this, oh no, I want to zoom in. I can reset the position on it, but I'm going to call this game object scene transitioner. And I'm just going to move to the top here of the hierarchy so we can see it. Next, I'm going to add a canvas into it. I'm going to call this canvas fade. This is going to be our canvas for fading in and out. So luckily with fading in and out, this is fairly straightforward. I'm going to just add an image into it. In the rect transform, I'm going to press and hold Alt and do this so that it's full size. And then I'm going to set the color to black. You'll notice if you have another canvas on your screen already, this new canvas will go behind. So I'm going to go here. First things first, I'm going to set the canvas to scale with screen size. Then in sort order, I'm just going to set this to a huge number so that it's on top. So now what the idea is, what we're going to do is we're going to, there's this thing called a canvas group that lets you modify the alpha of a bunch of things. So if we were to add, say, some text in here, let's make sure we're using our cool font. We can say loading, and say we wanted that to be our text that shows up in the middle while we're loading. Using a canvas group lets us change the alpha value, the transparency of all of these items all at once. Which is why I'm going to be using a canvas group here for our scene transition. So let me remove the text here because we don't need that. I'm just going to do a simple fade here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to the fade, the canvas itself, and I'm going to go ahead and go to animation, and I'm going to click create. I'm going to save it in the animation folder I've already created, and I'm going to call this fade in. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to 1 second, and let me share my screen. So we're going to go to the 1 second mark here, and then we're going to go over to the canvas group alpha and set that to 0. Oh, no, wait, we can't do that yet. We're going to first click the record button, and then we'll go to the 1 second mark and set the alpha to 0 here. And what that'll do is Unity will create a keyframe at the beginning and a keyframe at the end. And if I click play on this animation, you can see it's like fading in. And that's the animation we want. First things, before I do that, I'm going to uncheck loop because we don't want this to loop. We just want it to play once. You can see, yeah, there we go. It's looping now in the preview, but when we actually use it, we don't want it to loop. I'm gonna copy all of these points, and I'm gonna click create new clip. I'm gonna create a fade out, and I'm gonna paste these points in here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scroll out a little bit. I'm gonna select this and bring it to 2 seconds, and then I'm gonna move everything back to the beginning of the animation. And what that does is it creates an animation that'll fade to black. And so now we have 2 animations, And this one I also want to not be looping. And that will create the two animations for fading in and fading out for scenes. Next thing we're going to do is you'll see the object that we highlighted when we created already has an animator added to it, and the animation controller is set to this fade. So I'm going to, in the fade, I'm going to come into here. We want fade in to be our default state, because we want whenever a scene loads up, we want the scene to fade in like this. So we're going to keep fade in here. But we do want the ability to fade out whenever we're changing scenes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, I'm going to hit make transition, and then I'm going to bring it to fade out. I'm going to go to parameters, and I'm going to add a trigger, and I'm going to call this scene change. And I'm going to highlight this transition here. Let me set my Discord to do not disturb. Sorry about that. So I highlight the transition, and I set in the conditions scene change, and that sets this trigger so that we can, in our Unity scripts, trigger the animation to happen, to go from this to this. And I'm going to uncheck has exit time and set the transition duration to 0, because we want to be able to go immediately to the fade out animation from fade in. So I set those settings in the animator, and I added that transition, and that's all we need to start scripting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a scene transitioner script, create an ad, and I'll let it get created. Let's open it up in our VS Code. Well, I'm going to make this a singleton because we just want one public scene transitioner instance. And then in awake, we're going to do if instance is not equal to null and instance is not equal to this, destroy this, else instance equal this, don't destroy unload this dot game object. I believe that's all of it. I have yep, looks good to me. Just add a return just in case. This will make our scene transitioner. We want this to be static because we want a singleton. Instead of void update, I'm gonna add a function, public void change level string or change scene string scene name, and then I actually want to create a coroutine as well, because if you remember, we created our animations that are 1 second long, and we want to fade first and then change scenes, and then when in the new scene we'll fade back. So private IEnumerator change scene after time, string scene name, float time, and then I want a public animator anim, and then so what we'll do is we'll say animator dot set trigger. What did we name this trigger here? We named it scene change. And then we'll do yield return new wait for seconds time, which is the parameter we're passing in, and then scene manager. We're going to have to do using Unity engine dot scene management. And we can talk to the scene manager, and say load scene, scene name here. And then in our code here where we were before calling scene manager directly, we'll remove that. Instead, we'll call scene transitioner dot change scene. It's not load scene. Dot instance dot change scene. Oh dang it! What was the? Oh, just target scene. Cool. And then in this function, public function, we'll do start coroutine with change scene after time. We'll call it with scene name 1.0f because we just want to wait for 1 second for the animation. And that, I believe, will be what we need to cause this to happen. Next thing to do is to drag this in here so that the animator that we need in our script is set. Then I will let me create a folder here, prefabs. You're going to want to turn your scene transitioner object into a prefab and then add it to every scene because it's a singleton. All my scenes are in there. And I'm going to add the scene transitioner to here. And I believe that should work. I know I've done a lot of stuff without testing it, but let's try it out. So our game view, we click play. We start by fading in because the reason we automatically fade in is because, remember, fade in is set to the default state. So when this object is loaded in, it'll play this first animation immediately. And that's what we want. We want a nice fade in. And I'm going to hit click here to go to scene 1. Oh no, we forgot to do one thing. This is important. Where is it? I think it's an image. We want to go to canvas group. We want to uncheck interactable and blocks raycasts because we don't want this canvas to be blocking our ability to interact with the game and the other canvas that we have. Sorry about that. Okay, now we can see this works. I'm going to hit click here to go to scene 1. And it looks like it changed scenes, but then in the new scene, it didn't play the fade in. That's weird. Oh, I think it's because we have don't destroy on load in, and so it'll we probably don't want don't destroy on load. We want to create a new one of these in every scene so that when it gets created, it'll play the animation. We could do that, or we can add a transition backwards, which might be a better thing. We'll add a new trigger. We'll call it scene start. We'll add a transition from fade out back to fade in. We'll again remove the exit time and the transition duration to 0. We'll add the condition scene start onto it. And we'll keep don't destroy on load. After the scene loads, we will say animator dot set trigger scene start. And I believe that will make it do what we want now. There we go. And now it transitioned into scene 1 like that. And again, because we're using the canvas group in our animation, the alpha of the canvas group, we can, like I mentioned earlier, I can go to UI, I can add some text in here. We'll use the cool font that we added in earlier. I'm going to say loading. And then I'm going to center this text here. And then let's hit save. and then let's hit play. And now click here. It says loading, and then nice. So this would be great if you just not even loading, you wanted to add like an icon from your game in your loading in your like scene transition. You can fade to that. And this can really be, you can do this in basically any ways you want. So I can like, if I duplicate this fade, let's say I rename this to wipe, for example. I can what I can do instead of a fade out here. So let me just disable this real quick. What I'm saying is we can essentially create a new animation here for this. Let me create a new clip and let's call it wipe in. So what we want to do is before we start recording, we want to move this image. Oh yeah, we want to hit record. We'll go to 1 second, and at the end of the 1 second, we'll move this out here, like that. And so now it'll wipe like that. It's like moving out. We'll save that. I'm gonna copy this, and then I'm gonna make wipe out. And I'm gonna paste this, and then do the thing I did before where I clicked and dragged, brought this to 2 seconds, moved it, and that inverts the animation. But we actually we want to start at positive 802 and then come into 0 like this. So that way when it'll wipe in and then wipe out like that. We'll set the scene transitioner to use wipe instead of fade. And then we'll have wipe use a new so there's a thing you can create for animations called an animator override controller. And we'll call this wipe. And what this does is you can choose an existing animator controller and just replace the stuff in there. So hold on, and we don't want wipe in and wipe out to be parts of this. We want in our wipe thing, we'll replace fade in with wipe in and fade out with wipe out. And that'll essentially, all of the logic we've already done here in our animator, we don't have to redo that logic. We're just replacing our transitions with the new transitions we wrote. So I believe that's all we need to now. Now we're still using fade for some reason. Why is that? Wonder what I'm doing wrong here. Let's debug. We're using the wipe animator. The wipe animator's controller is here. We don't want that. We want to use our wipe override controller that we wrote. Now, see, it wipes like that. Oh, hey, you see the bug immediately. We forgot to disable loops on these. So let's disable loops. Let's try again. So wipe out. Click here to go to scene 1. Wipe in, wipe out. And you notice the second scene had the fade as well, so it was like doing a fade and a wipe. That looks cool, and you might want to do that. But I will, in fact, replace that. It might be better to have made a prefab variant using wipe instead of fade, but instead I will, actually I can still do that. I'll say prefab variant, and I'll call this scene transitioner wipe. And then in ASDF, we'll replace the scene transitioner with a wipe. And go back to our menu scene. And of course, you can, when you're working in the scene, you can just disable this. Otherwise, it'll just kind of be in your face and you can't see anything. So, of course, but now we have a wipe. And we have a wipe again. Very cool. And, yeah, that's kind of the other part of what I wanted to go over today in terms of like polished stuff. How much time are we at? We're at about 25 minutes. That feels good. Um, the other thing that some games we may have commented on in our playtesting feedback was to add parallax. If you go to the Elements of Professionalism blog post on the eeks494.com website, there is a link to a parallax scrolling tutorial, which I will also link in the description of the video I'm uploading here for this discussion. That would be great to add to your, if you're working on a 2D games, it'll just add a lot of depth and make your game feel a lot richer. So, as I mentioned, I will add a link to that. But hopefully this sort of how to do a scene transition system here made sense and was good and helpful. And for teams that are planning on adding the scene transitioner in the final week, hopefully this helps you out. Yeah, are there any questions from the live audience? If not, it's been a great semester. I'm proud of the work that each and every team has done. These games are excellent, and despite the circumstances, you guys have done really, really wonderful stuff. And I'm really excited for it to all pay off at the showcase. I'm really excited for so many people to play your games. It's going to be great. Have a great weekend. Put in a lot of good time. And let's finish strong. See ya.